So, um, I was talking with this lady who was in a life group, and she she had a friend who had 13 children, um, eight of which were adopted, and then five which were her biological children. And all five of those kids had Down syndrome. And this lady was talking about how that friend was really uh just loving life and how all of her kids were happy and how everything was great. And I was just thinking like, you know, this is kind of emblematic of like one of the problems in our species is like just the lack of like I'm happy that they're happy. I think that's a good thing. But like it is clear that this person does not think on a certain level. Like they just don't. Like, how do you know? Well, I guess I know how, but it's just, it's unfortunate that like this person doesn't give pause and be like, okay, wait a second. So I had a kid, and the first kid has Down syndrome. And then that should make them wary of having another kid. But okay, maybe it was just a fluke. So then they have another kid. That kid has Down syndrome too. Now, after a while, uh, you should start to think, maybe I'm too old, or maybe there's something going on with my genes or something. But no, this woman instead, after her second kid, has a third kid, also with Down syndrome, and then has a fourth and a fifth with Down syndrome. Probably is going to have another kid. Who knows? But like, she just keeps spreading the immiseration. And, you know, I'm sure this lady and uh, would say that, like, well, I'm not spreading immiseration because my kids are happy. But, like, it's not saying much if your kids are happy who when they have Down syndrome. Like, they're not even fully online, you know? Like, the biological default is to, like, kind of want to go from one sense experience to the next sense experience and to essentially be in a rat race without even knowing that you're in a rat race. It's just automatic for you to want to do that. So like, I don't know, I'll just put an example of like video games. Like you'll just play one video game and then you want to play the next video game and then you'll want to play the next video game and your whole life is like that. And a lot of people, especially the dumber ones, don't tend to notice that that is like a cycle. They don't, because that's like a meta level observation. They don't see beyond the fact that, oh, they just want to play this next video game. They'll just see, like, I want to play this next video game, and that's it. They won't see that it's like this cyclical um, pattern of wanting the next sense experience, and you can't win because all you do is want the next sense experience. And then the second you get it, you want the next one. So there's no lasting satisfaction. And in that way, it once you realize that, it's like, oh, this is all kind of pointless. But so in other words, if you have a Down syndrome kid, then I don't think it's a coincidence that they're happy because they're not going to see that. They're not going to know that. Hell, a lot of people who are normally functioning don't even know that. Um, So, like, even if you are, like, quote unquote, happy and you feel happy, like, you still have to suffer a considerable amount. And I feel like this mother who had all those kids doesn't really see how even having Down syndrome and being happy itself is a huge opportunity cost against the life you could live if you were just more functional. So, like, yes, in a way, you could be happier because you can't realize that you're in a ceaseless rat race of pointlessness, but you're also like a huge economic burden on the person who's raising you. And now, again, she herself, it sounds like this woman was fine with that because she has 13 kids, and I can't imagine you'd have a lot of money. But like these, what kills me is like even if you're happy, uh, like let's say you're in like a slum and you're happy that you're in a slum, then yes, it's good that you're happy. But once you start thinking about it in terms of opportunity costs, like you're missing out on every single thing that is not in the slum. Um, and all the good things that you can't get in the slum. And just because you're too myopic to see it and are happy as a result doesn't mean that you're living objectively a good life because you're completely missing out on all of these other things. So really, you're only happy due to your own ignorance. Um, and if they ever get outside of that ignorance, here's one of the problems. And I don't know, maybe it's not very likely for a Down syndrome person, but if they ever get outside of that ignorance, they'll see that this is not good, that things could be a lot better, and they aren't. Um, it's kind of like I don't love to use the word selfish because I don't think that quite captures it. I know a lot of people say that having kids is selfish, but I don't necessarily think that's the problem. It's just like they just don't think about it. Like just because your kid is happy right now doesn't mean they're going to continue to stay happy. They still have to deal with the fact that the parent is going to die. They still have to deal with the fact that, well, if they have Down syndrome, once the parent dies, that they're essentially screwed. Like they need to be taken care of. And if they aren't, then they can only do menial labor, which means they have to work until they're dead because they'll never make any money. And yeah, maybe they can get out of this cycle through some, I don't know, government program or something. But even then, they're essentially a not very useful citizen. And I'm not saying this to be mean. I'm just saying objectively. Like, you know, you're not gonna again, this is stereotyping and whatever, but you're not gonna get a doctor out of a Down syndrome kid. It's just not gonna happen, you know? And like, ugh, people just don't seem to think about that. And they just think, oh well, my kid's happy at this transient stage of life. Like, yeah, okay, congratulations. We should give you a sticker, but just because they're happy now doesn't mean you helped out society. It doesn't mean you even helped out yourself if you knew any better, because now you just have an economic drain on yourself. But because you can't see it like that, or because you have some ideology going against that, then you don't think it's a problem. But if you ever wake up, then all of a sudden it will be a problem. Um, because I can't imagine having 13 kids. How is this person supporting 13 children? Either they have a ton of money or they're on a ton of government programs. So, like, I believe that if you're going to have a kid, you should be helped out by the government. Yes, but the way the government is set up right now, it's a joke. I don't know. I'm getting off into tangents, and it's hard to not tackle it from multiple angles, but it's really just like this is the kind of optimism that I think is very toxic because it's like if you rail against it and you're like, that is not a good thing that you had five Down syndrome kids, then you're seen as like overly negative and you're really uh raining on someone's parade. And it's true that I rain on their parade, but like for God's sake, like that should not be what is seen as good or aspirational because you essentially just condemned five people to being not much better than vegetables for their whole life. And now they're going to be a drain on society. And then I don't actually know the laws around Down syndrome people. I'm assuming they can reproduce if they want. So then they can have more people that are also, in all likelihood, going to be low functioning. And it's just baffling to me that people are this optimistic. Like, why? You have not helped the gene pool at all. You've like corrupted isn't the right word, but for God's sake, like wouldn't it make more sense to make someone who's like functional and optimal instead of like you don't want to have Down syndrome. I don't care if it's not politically correct to say that. You don't want it. And anyone who says that, oh, their life is just as good is deluded. They're completely off base. It is not as good. You can't do anything beyond menial labor. That is not good. Um, like when you look at Down syndrome people and like them being able to find a mate, which is another biological imperative, you have essentially screwed them over from being able to do that. The only other kind of mate they're going to be able to find is someone who is also severely impaired. Or I suppose if they have a lot of money, they could just get uh, someone who's not impaired to join them because they have a lot of money. But they're probably not going to have a lot of money because unless they're born into a rich family, which I doubt this one is, you know what I mean? So like you're condemning this person is what I'm trying to say. Like, yes, they might habitually be happy. Again, I don't think it's a coincidence that someone who is very dumb uh, is going to fall closer to the biological default of just kind of being somewhat happy all the time because they're not able to see that they're getting screwed over. Um, but even still, you know, you're not going to be able to find somebody who wants to be with you for 98% of the population, probably more, probably like 99. It's a dismal picture. And now you've created five of those people. It's insulting. Like, and what kills me even more is these people are considered like the person that I was talking to thought this person was a good parent because they had a bunch of happy kids. And I'm like, how could you be a good parent? Like if you're you know, maybe you'll think this is twisted, but in my view, if the world is terrible, life has guaranteed suffering, um, pleasure is transient, but suffering is guaranteed, then it seems to me the only way you could be a good parent is to not have kids at all because it's compassionate to not put them into this hellscape. And like, yes, there are things that you can absolutely enjoy. Um, and you can even have en masse an overall good life. Like, I don't know, you could live for like and be super rich and be super good looking and just have everything go right for you and totally enjoy your life and just move from pleasurable sense experience to pleasurable sense experience, even though again that's kind of a rat race in and of itself. At least it's a pleasant one because you never have to deal with the fact that like, oh, it's a pointless rat race because you're just moving from one thing to the next and it all kind of works out and you're never deprived and etc. And yes, that can happen, but when you have a kid, you can't know that your kid is going to live that life. You can't. And in fact, it's astronomically unlikely that that kid will live that life. Yes, there are some people who do that. Um, and then they, I don't know, die in their sleep or something. They don't even know the pain of knowing that they're going to die. But like, that is not the norm. So having a kid thinking, oh, they'll live a good life. Well, no, they won't. Like, they probably won't. They're probably going to be a wage slave, just like the other whatever percentage of the population, too high a percent, and they're going to have to work until they're like 80. That's not that's not liberation, So it is cruel to put someone into that position. And the optimists say, well, I think they'll live a good life, but they don't see how they're rolling the dice there. It's cruel to put someone in a position based off of chance, in other words. Like, they might luck out, probably won't though. Why would you do that to somebody? But I know why people do that to somebody is because they don't think it through. Or they're so hopelessly biased in their own stupidity that they don't see that this is a dismal state of affairs. And now, as a result, we have five more kids with Down syndrome. It's uh,